Alright, I'm going to talk to you about how to find the volume of cubes, rectangular prisms, square pyramids, rectangular pyramids, cylinders, and cones. And just to recap, volume is the amount of space that an object takes up, or you can think think of it as the amount of space that an object would hold. And you can actually count the number of cubes that would fit inside of each of these objects, but it sounds kind of weird to think of the number of cubes that would fit inside of a cylinder since it's circular. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to find volume using different formulas. The trick for each of these, though, is to understand what the formulas represent and to take the time not to just punch everything in the calculator, but to take the time to write the formula, plug it in, and then you can use a calculator. Okay, just like I showed you guys in class with the sheet that you have for homework. Okay, so I'm going to start with prisms real quickly. A prism, the formula for volume of a prism is length times width times height. And it really doesn't matter which one's the length, which one's the width, and which one's the height on a prism, because you could turn it and, like, I may say that this is the height, but then I could turn it on its side and then you could say that this is the height. So it really doesn't matter which one's the length, the width, or the height. But just for these purposes, I'm going to call this one the length, this the width, and this is the height. Okay, and what you do is you multiply the length times the width times the height, and that will give you the volume. But essentially what you're doing here, and this is true for the volume of everything, is that you're finding the area of the base. So this is the base, the bottom part of that rectangular prism. You find the area of the base, which is length times width, and then you multiply it by the height. That's you filling up that rectangular prism with whatever the area of the base is. The same thing holds true for the volume of a square or rectangular pyramid. You find the area of the base, which is down here, and then you multiply it by the height. The difference, though, is that you have to divide it by 3 or multiply it by 1/3, because 3 pyramids fit inside a prism that has the same length, width, and height. A pyramid is 1/3 the size of a prism with equal dimensions. And you can actually Google, there's some really good, I say Google, you can actually look on YouTube, and there's some really good YouTube videos that show you or that prove this to you, like the one that I showed you in class. That one was volume prism, and if you type in final, volume prism and final, there's a video and it shows you how a prism can be split up into 3 equal pyramids. So that's just to prove to you why you have to divide by 3. But again, you're finding the area of the base. That's what the big B is. We're not talking about the base like in the base of a triangle. We're talking about finding the area of the base, multiplying it by the height, but then you have to divide by 3. For a cylinder, again, you're finding the area of the base and you're multiplying it by the height. But a cylinder has a base that is a circle, so that's why it's pi r squared. That's the area of the base times the height. Again, you find the area of the circle, and then it's like you're filling the cylinder up. A cone, again, you're finding the area of the base, which is a circle, so it's pi r squared h, and then you're multiplying it by the height. But because it's a cone and 3 cones will fit inside a cylinder, we're going to divide it by 3. So if you have a cylinder with the same radius, the same height as a cylinder with equal radius and equal height, it's going to have a volume that is 1/3 of the cylinder. So it's pi r squared h divided by 3. So let's do some examples that show this. First I'm going to do a cube, and I didn't just show you an example of a cube because a cube is like a rectangular prism, and that the volume is equal to length times width times height. But with a rectangular prism, we know that the length, the width, and the height are all the same. So this is called the length of the side, and so the volume is the side cubed, length times width times height, or side times side times side, which is side cubed. So when we plug it in, and I'm going to write this down here, side times side times side, because a lot of times people mistake and think, oh, that's side times 3, and there's a difference between multiplying it by 3 and cubing it. Okay, so if the side is 4, it's going to be 4 times 4 times 4, which is 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64, so it is 64, and it's cubic feet because we are talking volume. So you want to make sure that you cube your unit. So that means that you have a cube. If it's 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet, that's 64 cubes that are 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot would fit inside this cube. Okay? Here is a prism. a rectangular prism, and again, it doesn't really matter which one's the length, which one's the width, or which one's the height, as long as you don't double up. Like we don't call this 4 feet the length and the height. It can only be one dimension. So we'll call this one the height. So 4 feet's the height, 2 feet's the width, and 6 feet is the length. And we're going to plug everything in here. So the length was 6, the width was 2, and the height was 4. So you can see all I did here was plug in length, width, and height. And when I multiply all that out, 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 4 is 48, so this is 48, and it's cubic feet. So it's 48 cubic feet inside that rectangular prism right there. All right, now let's talk about a pyramid. Again, a pyramid is 1/3 the size of a rectangular prism with the same dimensions, same length, width, and height, okay? So this one, it does matter a little bit because we're finding the area of the base. That B right there represents area of the base. So this rectangular pyramid right here has a base of 7 meters by 3 meters, right? So 7 meters times 3 meters is 21 square meters. That's the area of the base. So when I'm using this formula here and I plug everything in, it's going to be 1/3 the area of the base, which is 21, times the height, which is 8. So you can see in here, all I did is I plugged in 1/3 area of the base times the height. And when you do your math on this one, you end up with 56, and it's cubic meters. So this pyramid holds 56 cubic meters. Okay? Because remember, you're doing 21 times 8, and then you have to divide by 3 to get the 56. All right, let's do a cylinder. Volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. So volume is equal to pi, which is 3.14. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. Radius squared. The radius, this represents the radius here, which is 4. Radius squared means radius times radius, which is 4 times 4. So that's going to be 16. And then a height of 9. So again, you can see pi r squared h. So we're going to, I'm going to have to use a calculator on this one, sorry. And you get 452.16, and it's cubic meters. Okay? Alright, now we have a cone, and again, 3 cones fit inside a cylinder with the same radius and height. So that's why we have to divide by 3 to find the volume of a cone. So volume is equal to 1/3. Sorry, that all connects in there. Pi, which is 3.14, times radius squared. Our radius here is 2. We square it. 2 times 2 is 4. And then times our height of 6. So here what you want to do, don't use 0.3 for 1/3 because it's only going to make your answer off a little bit, but it's still going to make your answer off a little bit more than others. So don't use 1/3 for don't use 0.3 for 1/3. Instead, just divide by 3. You'll get a little bit more accurate answer. I know we're already rounding pi right here, but just to help us get a little bit of a better answer. So I'm going to do 4 times 6 times 3.14, and I get 75.36, but I'm going to divide by 3, and that gives me 25.12 cubic millimeters. Now there are times with cylinders and with cones where you're going to be given the diameter, so you need to make sure you're using the right dimension when you're figuring things out. So volume is equal to 1/3. Pi is 3.14. Now r squared. This is our diameter. The diameter is 10. Well, if the diameter is 10, that means that the radius is 5 meters. So when it says r squared right here, we need to square 5. 5 times 5 is 25, and then times a height of 15. So again, you can see all I did was say, okay, 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay, and then we can put all that in our calculator. We're going to do 3.14 times 25 times 15, and then divide that by 3, and we get 392.5. 392.5, and it's cubic meters.